Guys, welcome back to the channel. Quick video here on my two-wheel drive slash buggy setup. Just show you guys what I got going on here. I have kind of a long travel suspension thing going on. I'll show you what shocks I'm running. Yeah, then we'll get to some running video. I took this thing out for a rip in some sand and I had an absolute blast with the paddle tires on it. So stay tuned, check it out. Thanks. What I got going on here for shocks. This is a 90 millimeter shock up front. I forget what these are off of. I don't know if this is a Traxxas shock or an axial shock. If I can figure that out, I'll put it in the comments below. But anyway, it's a 90 mil shock. You don't need anything too crazy. Just figure out your spring rate. You can see I got these things cranked pretty good, and it's still a little bit, it's a little too soft. So I'm gonna try to find slightly stiffer spring for the front. On the rear, these are actually off of my axial bomber, and this is a 105 millimeter shock. And it gives you just enough where you can see the drive shaft there is starting to rub this RPM arm a tiny bit. That's about maximum down travel, but works really well. The stock springs on those feel really nice. So front, super light. I mean, it worked well enough. I'd be happy to leave it like this. I just want to see if I can get it any better. And again, those are RPM arms mounted on the shock mount, mounted toward the inside, and you get some nice amount of droop there and full travel. So it's a great setup. Highly recommend it. Go and find yourself some longer shocks and throw them on here. If you're running different drive shafts, you might even be able to get a tiny bit more travel in the back, but it's great the way it is. So just wanted to show you guys. Onto the running video here. So I started out just running this on 2S, and I was pretty happy with it. It rips pretty good. You definitely get some sand flinging up off the tires. I always love that in slow motion, how the sand looks. You get like this ripple effect off of the paddles. Just so cool to watch. Hitting some jumps here. It jumps nice and straight. You'll see later on where I switch over to 3S. It took me a little while to adjust to the extra power. It really just wanted to stand the front up quite a bit more, but was a lot more fun to drive, honestly, on 3S. So stay tuned or fast forward if you're bored with the 2S footage here. But yeah, it wheelies like mad on 3S. You can rip, you know, really long-standing wheelies across an entire beach if you're really trigger happy. So I'm gonna probably just stick to 3S on this truck. It was just that much more fun. Really happy with the suspension performance. I want to try to get a little bit stiffer springs up front just because I have the preload really cranked, but I kind of really dig the action on the front shocks. You see how they really just kind of has like a very realistic movement to it where they stay kind of topped out, of course, because there's so much rear weight bias on this truck. So the front end definitely rides very light. You can see how it really just soaks up the terrain in the front, and those wheels just kind of move up and out of the way pretty quickly. And I like that nice quick suspension action. Really makes it look very realistic in terms of how it drives. And it honestly handles really well too, as good as it can handle. Of course, with this much rear weight and a lot of power, especially on 3S, you need to, if you want to steer, you need to let off the throttle, because if the front wheels are in the air or really unweighted, you're not going to get much grip on those front tires, and you're just not going to be able to steer very well. So like any other two-wheel drive truck, you need to let off the throttle to steer. So even in the sand here with these sand tires in the front, they steer pretty well, but you just need to let off the throttle a little bit. But really fun rig to drive. Just as I'm doing this voiceover, I'm like, man, I want to get this car out again in the sand. It's so much fun. I wish this spot were closer to me. This is like about a 45-minute drive for me to get to this spot. But I'm happy to have this nearby. Everything close to me is just super rocky, more like woods with rocks and roots and logs, and just a ton of leaves this time of year. So having this spot to get to is just awesome. So you can see here the added power, man. It took me a minute to get used to it after driving this thing on 2S. I was a little bit throttle happy, but you can just see how much more this thing rips. Didn't really have any big issues with motor heat. It was getting hot to the point where I really want to try to figure out like a fan setup, but it's kind of in a weird spot on this car with the rear mounted motor. It's hard to really fit a fan on here. If you guys know of anything that fits and works well and doesn't look goofy or hang off and and just get destroyed, let me know, because I'd like to rig up something. Even though it was really cool out this day, I was definitely getting some motor heat. Maybe I need to gear down a tiny bit, or I can just reduce my dual rate. But what fun is that? I want this thing to have this kind of power. So again, I didn't have any issues with the motor. It ran fine. I didn't have like a temp gun with me, so I don't know the exact temp, but it was really hot to the touch. So and that was just like one battery pack through this thing. But yeah, look at the suspension coming through here. Just so cool. I think running this thing with the longer travel setup like I have it now, like really just max out your suspension. Like you can measure and see exactly what you can fit on yours. However, look, if you're running stock arms, RPM arms, it might be slightly different, but really just take a measurement. Let your arms fully droop up front. Take a measurement of what shock you could fit in there. If you have a slightly longer shock, you could always put a little spacer underneath the piston to shorten it up, or you could run like a limit strap if you wanted to not like overextend your arms or put too much strain on your front arms or the rear. Especially with the rear, you're limited to the amount of flex you can get out of your drive shafts. So depending on what you're running, if you have some aftermarket drive shafts, maybe you can get even more travel. I'm happy with the setup as it is. I think it just looks super cool with the front arms drooping down that far, and of course then you get that little added bit of travel up front for soaking up the bumps. But yeah, I'm going to keep experimenting with some different shocks, and I also want to try to scale this thing out a little bit. I found an interior that's going to fit really cool in this body, so I'm probably just going to cut out the windows, front window and side windows, throw an interior in there, maybe do a little driver figure. I think would be cool, and just kind of make it look a little more scale. Maybe add a couple little lights here and there, front bumper or something. I don't know, we'll see, but stay tuned if you guys want to check that out. But yeah, I had a blast driving this thing, and for something that's a pretty cheap rig to build, I mean, look, you can come across a used two-wheel drive Slash pretty cheap as like a roller especially, and then just build it up into whatever you like. Hobbywing has some really great sales going on right now. Motor ESC combos are super discounted, or at least they were a couple days ago. You can find a killer setup for this thing. You know, it seems to be good like around that 3,000 to 4,000 kV range. I think would be ideal for 3S on this thing, and then just play around with the gearing to get it right. And yeah, it's just going to be a really fun build, I think. The Proline Baja Beetle body is awesome on these rigs too. So you have a lot of options to build this up into a buggy. I've seen guys do like either a Element Gatekeeper or an Axial Bomber cage on this build. I think it was Double Clutch Productions. If you want to check him out, looks really cool. That's going to do it, guys. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video. Later.